home from the war. Where was home?
At that time it was in Billings. Folks had sold out in Butte. Dad had retired from the Texas company, and his hometown was Billings, of course, and so we moved down there. I'd been to Billings as an infant, but I didn't know anything about Billings, and went down and didn't know where they lived or anything, but I found out, and then I went from there back up to Butte and then back down and got discharged from there.
Where did they discharge you from?
Santa Ana, California, and it was this captain that interviewed me. He was very honest. He was a good man. He said the way they're treating you now is about as good as the military will ever get. And it was superb. We had a couple golf courses, swimming pool. Somebody made our bed every day, 2 people to a room, and he said the food was out of this world. He said they're being nice to you, hoping you can re-enlist. And I repeat, I had to do a little fishing before I even thought about it. Then I came home, and that was in 1st of January, and then I picked up my partner again, one of them.
1st of January 1945, 46?
Yes, 45.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see. No, that was January 46. Yeah, 46. Because I had just turned 20 then, but I'd been in the States at 19. And I picked up my partner, and we went back up to Libby again, got a job with J. Neal's, and setting chokers originally. Snow up to my ass, and the coldest I've ever been in my whole life, because I was stationed in Guam, which is a tropical island in the Pacific, and then a month or so later I'm up setting chokers, and I was never so cold in my whole life. And then come spring, we were sawing by then for falling timber for J. Neal's, and that was good money, dangerous as hell, but good money. And then, right out of the blue, this is 1946, and then out of the blue, Frank said, I might go down to Missoula and get a job as a smoke jumper.
Now, what was Frank's last name?
O'Boyle.
Okay.
Frank O'Boyle, yeah. He later wound up in Las Vegas at a keno down there. Said, I don't know, was he a bouncer or what the hell he was, but he passed away. But at any rate, Frank said he'd like to be a smoke jumper, and I'd been out of town, I'd never heard of them, I said, well, what do they do, And, he said they jump out of airplanes and put out fires. And I said, do they pay good? And he said, oh yeah, real good. What we were doing was dangerous, and I sensed that I knew that. I would have just done anything to get away from there come spring, But, and then we went down, and they were looking for people that knew how to saw. These people they brought in were mostly ex-paratroopers because they were experienced jumpers. Most of them had never seen a crosscut saw. I don't think there was very many that could, know anything about falling timber or anything else. So they thought we were pretty good, They wanted us. And so we got through the training, and the big boss, Earl Cooley, came over to Frank and he said, we've got an awful problem. We need a saw filer and tool man, and we don't have anybody that knows anything about it. Frank said, Jack can do it. He said, I don't want any fire, but Jack can do it. So he came to me and asked me, and I said, I spent, I'm inquisitive. I asked questions, and I spent time with the saw filer in the evening when he was working, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I learned quick enough. And so they had a tool room, and I went over and started filing saws, and I never missed a jump. They, when my turn came up, I went out, and I'd come back, and there would be fire. you wouldn't believe it, but they would stack like that to begin with, the crosscuts, from maybe 2 years worth. And then I would file the saws and hang the Pulaskis and the et cetera, et cetera. And I did that for 4 years. I just go in and then when the 4th year, when my last day on the job, Earl Cooley came over and said, "Jack," he said, "they've got an opening in Spokane, good paying, 12 months job as a saw filer, tool man." He said, "You'd be perfect for the job," and he said, "I can't positively guarantee, but he said it's a good paying job," and he said, I'll take care of my end and get the job for you if you're interested." And I said, "No." I said, I just getting out of college and I wanted to go teaching. And I thought, I've been, war was an awful thing for me, it was brutal. And when you're burning out great cities, the people are there, the children, etc. I wanted to do something decent. And that, what we were doing to Japan wasn't decent. Necessary, but not decent. So I told Mr. Cooley, I said no, but I did appreciate it. And then from there on out, I put another 5 years, 5 seasons here, up at Big Creek, and then here in Whiteface with the Forest Service.
Well, those years, so 4 years of jumping then.
Yeah.
4 seasons, and then you were going to school in the winter months.
Yeah, I was going to school down in Dillon.
In Dillon?
Yeah.
Well, that first year when you were first filing saws, where were you working? Where was the base in 1946?
That was Missoula.
Was it out by on South Avenue? Or where was it?
No, that was at 9 Mile. We were about, 20 miles out west of Missoula, something like that. Beautiful setup, an old CCC camp. And then when the season started, the fire season, the Forest Service would rent 2 buildings at the fairground, one for barracks and one for the cookhouse. And we would live right in the fairground. And next to that was the airport. The airport later moved out west. And where the high school is now in Missoula alongside the fairgrounds, that's where the airport was. And we moved in there. And can I tell you a bit of nonsense here? We had a field of alfalfa out at 9 Mile, and the Ford Tri-Motors would come in, and they would land, and we'd fill up, 10 men, and they would take off. But there was a lot of us out there. And this boy from down south, I don't know, never did know what his name was, but he said, we're doing all the work, and those gophers are doing all the complaining. And they were squeaking all over the place. And he bent over, and how he did it, I don't know, but he bent over and took off his boot, and he walked over and made a loop, and the next time that one gopher close by came up, he pulled, and in a gloved hand, he had the gopher in his hand, and came over, and I thought, he's going to kill him or something. I had no idea. And just about then the Ford came over and a little drift chute came out, and it came down like this. And a drift chute is a little tiny chute with a little tiny sandbag in proportion to a person of average weight. And the little parachute landed, and one of the jumpers, we were all standing around looking at the gopher, and he said, "Let's jump him." Well, it struck us all that that's what we should do. So one of the guys hobbled over, full 2 parachutes on him in full gear, picked up the little chute and cut off the strings, and went over and tied the gopher up to the parachute. The next time the Ford landed, they handed him gloves, of course, to one of the guys that was going up, and he took the gopher up. And so we waited, and a little bit later on, here's the gopher. They start throwing out drift chutes, the spotter did, and here comes the drift chute, and then here comes the gopher, and he's coming down, and he's really doing fine. He came down and hit the ground, good landing, but he just laid there, and his feet were spread out like this, all 4 feet spread out like this with this parachute hung on him. So we all staggered over, and at that time there was about 30 of us, I guess, something like that. One of the guys went down, cut off the strings, and that little guy's head was all over looking, trying to figure out what the hell happened to him, you know? And then all of a sudden he got to his feet, stiff-legged. He couldn't bend his legs, but he could stand up stiff-legged, and he stood there for a minute or two, and there was a big circle. All the jumpers had a circle around watching this little fellow on the ground. And then he started walking, and everybody there, from the air, it must have been a riot, because here all these monsters with all these parachutes on walking in this big circle across this field. All of us were walking to see what was going to happen, and this stiff-legged creature going like this. And there were gopher holes on either side, but I don't believe he could turn, because he would walk by him, look at him, and then keep right on going, and finally there was one right ahead of him, and down he went. And you know, I don't believe he ever came up again.